The quantum harmonics lab hummed with energy as Dr. Thomas Blackwood adjusted the final settings on his experimental dimensional resonance chamber. 3 years of research, countless sleepless nights, and his entire family fortune had led to this moment. If his calculations were correct, he was about to prove the existence of parallel dimensions. Initiating quantum field collapse in 3, 2, 1. Thomas's voice echoed through the empty lab. His colleagues had long since abandoned what they considered his obsessive pursuit of an impossible theory. But Thomas knew better. He'd seen the patterns in the mathematics, the whispers of other realities bleeding through in his calculations. The machine's hum rose to a fever pitch. Blue-white energy crackled between the containment pylons, casting stark shadows across Thomas's face. His heart raced as the readings climbed past theoretical limits. This was it. This was. Warning klaxons screamed to life. The energy field warped, its color shifting to a deep crimson. Thomas lunged for the emergency shutdown, but his fingers froze inches from the controls as reality itself seemed to tear open before him. From the crimson tear stepped a woman, if she could be called that. Her skin was the color of midnight, her hair a cascade of living flames. Curved horns crowned her head, and wings like sheets of living darkness folded against her back. But it was her eyes that held Thomas transfixed, swirling pools of golden fire that seemed to peer straight into his soul. "Well," she purred, her voice like warm honey laced with poison. "This is unexpected. I was aiming for the 7th circle, but instead I find myself in the presence of a rather interesting mortal." She glanced around the lab, taking in the sophisticated equipment with evident curiosity. "I am Nyxeria, and you, my brilliant human, have done something rather remarkable." Thomas found his voice, though it trembled slightly. "You're not what I expected to find in a parallel dimension." Nyxeria laughed, the sound like distant chimes. "Oh, darling, I'm not from a parallel dimension. I'm from somewhere much more interesting." She ran a finger along the edge of his quantum resonance chamber, leaving trails of sparks in her wake. "You've managed to punch a hole straight into the demonic realms. Quite impressive. Really." "Impossible," Thomas whispered, though his scientific mind was already racing to incorporate this new data. "Demons aren't real. This has to be some sort of quantum-induced hallucination," says the man who just tore a hole in reality. Nyxeria countered, moving closer. The air around her shimmered with heat and power. "But I can prove I'm quite real. And more importantly, I can offer you something you've spent your entire life seeking." Thomas took an involuntary step backward. "And what's that?" "Knowledge," she said simply. "Understanding of the true nature of reality. Access to sciences your world won't discover for millennia." Her lips curved in a knowing smile. "And perhaps something to fill that terrible loneliness that drives you to work alone in this lab night after night." "In exchange for what?" Thomas asked, his throat dry. Years of scientific skepticism warred with the evidence of his senses. Nyxeria's expression grew serious. "Your help. Something is coming, Dr. Blackwood. Something that threatens both your world and mine. I need a human scientist of exceptional ability. Your breakthrough tonight proves you're exactly what I've been searching for." "Why should I trust you? You're literally a demon." "Succubus, specifically," she corrected. "And you shouldn't trust me." "Not yet, but I'm offering you the chance to expand human knowledge beyond anything you've dreamed possible. Isn't that worth at least hearing me out?" Thomas looked at his life's work, the machine that had brought him to this moment. He'd always said he would do anything in the pursuit of knowledge. Now that resolve was being put to the ultimate test. "Tell me more," he said finally. Nyxeria's smile widened, revealing teeth just a bit too sharp to be human. "Oh, I think this is going to be the beginning of a fascinating partnership, Dr. Blackwood. Let me show you what reality really looks like." As she began to weave images in the air with casual gestures, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made either the biggest breakthrough or the biggest mistake of his life. Only time would tell which. And time, he was beginning to suspect, might be running out for both their worlds. 2 weeks had passed since Thomas's accidental summoning, and his lab had become nearly unrecognizable. Arcane symbols glowed alongside quantum equations on his whiteboards. Mystical artifacts shared shelf space with scientific instruments, and in the center of it all, Nyxeria lounged in midair, casually defying gravity as she reviewed his latest calculations. "Your grasp of interdimensional mathematics is impressive," she said, her fiery hair floating in an unfelt breeze. Most humans would have gone mad trying to reconcile demonic physics with their limited understanding of reality. Thomas rubbed his tired eyes, trying to focus on the problem at hand. Most humans haven't spent their lives preparing to rewrite the laws of physics, though I admit combining quantum mechanics with demonic energy signatures is challenging. "Is that why you've been double-checking my every calculation?" Nyxeria asked, her golden eyes glinting with amusement. "Don't think I haven't noticed. Can you blame me?" Thomas gestured at the complex equations covering the walls. "Everything you're showing me could revolutionize human science, or it could be an elaborate deception leading to catastrophe. I still don't know which." Nyxeria descended from her aerial perch, moving with inhuman grace. "Wise of you to maintain your skepticism, though I admit it's somewhat refreshing to work with someone who questions rather than simply desires." "Is that unusual for a succubus?" Thomas asked, trying to keep his voice neutral despite her proximity. The air around her always seemed charged with electricity, making his skin tingle. "You have no idea," she sighed. "Centuries of humans seeing us as nothing but creatures of temptation and lust, as if we couldn't have depths beyond their fantasies." She traced a complex symbol in the air, adding another variable to their shared equation. "Though I suppose I'm guilty of making assumptions about humans as well." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I expected you to be more susceptible to distraction," she admitted. "Most humans I've encountered can barely focus in my presence, yet here you are, more interested in understanding the mathematical principles behind my powers than in their more traditional applications." "Don't mistake focus for immunity," Thomas muttered, turning back to his calculations. "I'm just good at compartmentalizing." Nyxeria's laughter sent shivers down his spine. "Are you now? Is that why your heart rate increases every time I move closer? Why your pupils dilate when I demonstrate my abilities? Why you've barely slept since I arrived, spending hours reviewing security footage of our work together?" Thomas felt heat rise to his face. "That's just scientific curiosity." "Is it?" She moved closer, her wings casting shifting shadows across his workstation. "Then why are you blushing, Dr. Blackwood?" Before he could respond, alarms blared throughout the lab. The dimensional sensors they'd set up were screaming warnings of a massive energy spike. "It's happening again," Nyxeria said, all playfulness vanishing from her voice. "Another breach attempt." They'd rushed to the monitoring stations. The displays showed reality itself buckling under some enormous pressure, just like the night Nyxeria had appeared, but much, much bigger. "These readings are off the scale," Thomas said, fingers flying across his keyboard. "Whatever's trying to break through, it's orders of magnitude more powerful than your arrival." "It's them," Nyxeria whispered, real fear creeping into her voice for the first time. "They're testing the barriers between worlds, looking for weak points. We're running out of time." "Then maybe it's time you told me what we're really dealing with," Thomas said firmly. "No more half-truths or deflections. What exactly are you preparing for?" Nyxeria met his gaze, her golden eyes blazing with an emotion he couldn't quite read. "You're right. You deserve to know everything. But Thomas, once I tell you, there's no going back. Your life as you knew it will be over." "My life as I knew it ended the moment you stepped through that portal," he replied. "I'm already neck-deep in whatever this is. Might as well swim all the way out." She nodded slowly. "Very well. But first," she waved her hand, and reality shimmered around them. The lab vanished, replaced by what appeared to be a vast chamber deep underground, filled with ancient machinery and pulsing with otherworldly power. "Welcome to my real workspace," Nyxeria said grimly. "Now let me show you what we're really up against, and why I needed a human brilliant enough to help me stop it." Thomas stared at the impossible scene before him, realizing that everything up until now had been merely a prelude. The real dangerous games were about to begin. The ancient chamber thrummed with power as Nyxeria led Thomas through rows of crystalline machines that seemed to be growing from the very bedrock. Their footsteps echoed off walls inscribed with scripts that hurt his eyes to look at directly. "This facility predates human civilization," Nyxeria explained, her flames casting dancing shadows. "It was built by beings you might call the architects, neither demons nor angels, but something far older. They created the barriers between realms to maintain cosmic balance." Thomas ran his hand along one of the crystal pylons, feeling it pulse in response to his touch, and now those barriers are failing. Worse, Nyxeria placed her hand on a central control panel, causing holographic images to materialize around them. "They're being deliberately weakened. Look." The air filled with images of massive tiers in reality, each one spewing forth creatures that defied description. Thomas watched in horror as entire dimensions collapsed in on themselves, devoured by something that seemed to eat reality itself. "We call them the Void Hunters," Nyxeria said softly. "They exist between realities, feeding on the energy released when dimensions collapse. For eons, the barriers kept them at bay. But now, something's changed," Thomas finished, his scientific mind already racing to understand the implications. "But why do you need me? Surely there are demons with far more experience with this technology." Nyxeria's expression darkened. "Because the Void Hunters have allies within the demon realm itself. There's a faction that believes they can control them, use them as weapons. They're helping to weaken the barriers from our side. And you can't trust anyone in your own realm to help stop them," Thomas realized. "That's why you needed an outsider." "Not just any outsider," she corrected. "I needed someone who could understand both the science and the magic involved. Someone brilliant enough to help me restore the barriers, but with no existing ties to demon politics. Someone expendable," Thomas suggested dryly. "Unexpected," Nyxeria countered, moving closer. "The traitors in my realm would never suspect I'd trust a human with something this crucial. And they certainly wouldn't expect that human to be capable of understanding, let alone manipulating, architect technology." Thomas studied the holographic displays, noting how the energy patterns matched theoretical models he developed years ago. "These barriers, they're quantum fields, aren't they? Operating on principles I was just beginning to discover in my research. Now you see why I chose you," Nyxeria said with a hint of pride. "Your work was already approaching understanding of fundamental forces that most beings take millennia to grasp." Before Thomas could respond, the chamber's crystals flashed red. New holograms appeared, showing massive energy distortions forming around the globe. "They're making their move," Nyxeria hissed. "Multiple breach attempts simultaneously. They're trying to overwhelm the remaining barriers." Thomas rushed to the control panel, his fingers dancing across symbols that somehow made perfect sense to him now. The pattern, it's not random. They're targeting specific weak points, creating a resonance cascade that could shatter all dimensional boundaries at once. "Can you stop it?" "Maybe. But I'll need to understand exactly how these systems work." "No more secrets, Nyxeria. Show me everything." She hesitated for just a moment, then placed her hands on either side of his head. "Brace yourself. This might hurt." Knowledge flooded into Thomas's mind. Eons of history, complex, multidimensional mathematics, the true nature of reality itself. He gasped as his consciousness expanded to encompass concepts no human was ever meant to understand. When the flood of information finally stopped, he staggered, supported by Nyxeria's steady hands. That was too much," she asked, genuine concern in her golden eyes. "Incredible," he breathed. "And terrifying. The scale of what we're dealing with. He straightened, new purpose filling him. We need to get to work. Now. Nyxeria smiled, but there was sadness in it. I should warn you, even if we succeed, stopping them will likely require a sacrifice. One that. The chamber shook violently, crystals screaming in alarm. Through the holographic displays, they watched as reality itself began to tear open above major cities worldwide. Warning me will have to wait, Thomas said grimly, turning to the controls with newfound understanding. Right now, we have a multiverse to save. As they worked frantically to prevent dimensional collapse, neither of them noticed how the crystal's light seemed to shift when they moved in sync, or how the ancient machinery hummed in harmony with their combined power. The architect's technology was responding to something unprecedented, a perfect resonance between human and demon energies. The hidden agenda was finally fully revealed, but the greatest revelation was still to come. The ancient chamber had become a war room. Holographic displays showed reality fracturing across the globe as Thomas and Nyxeria worked frantically to stabilize the dimensional barriers. Their movements were perfectly synchronized now, as if they'd been partners for centuries rather than weeks. Breach in Sao Paulo contained, Thomas called out, his fingers dancing across crystalline controls that responded to his touch as naturally as breathing. Redirecting power to the Tokyo anomaly. The Void Hunters are adapting, Nyxeria warned, her flames burning brighter with exertion. They're learning from each failed attempt. Look at the pattern. Thomas saw it too. Each new breach was more sophisticated than the last, exploiting weaknesses they hadn't even discovered yet. They're not just mindless entropy beings, are they? This is coordinated intelligence. Now you understand why some demons believe they can be controlled, Nyxeria said grimly. The Void Hunters aren't just destroying reality. They're studying it, learning, evolving. Another alarm screamed through the chamber. A massive tear was forming over London, larger than anything they'd seen yet. Thomas's enhanced understanding showed him exactly what would happen if it fully opened. A cascading collapse that would unravel their entire dimension. We can't stop this one conventionally, he realized. The resonance is too deep. Nyxeria's golden eyes met his. There's one way, but, she hesitated. The price would be extreme. Tell me. The architects built in a failsafe. A complete reset of the barrier system. But it requires. She took a deep breath. It requires the willing fusion of energies from opposite realms, demon and human, perfectly aligned. A joining that would consume both participants to power the reset. Thomas understood immediately. Us. You've been preparing me for this since the beginning, haven't you? That's why you chose me specifically. Yes, she admitted. I sensed your potential that first moment. A human whose energy signature could potentially match mine perfectly enough for the reset. But Thomas, I never expected. Her voice faltered. Never expected what? To care, she whispered. Succubi aren't supposed to form real attachments. We're creatures of desire, not love. But working with you, seeing your brilliance, your dedication. I've never met anyone, human or demon, quite like you. Another tremor shook the chamber. The London breach was growing exponentially now. They had minutes at most. There's something else you should know, Thomas said, making a decision. I figured it out when you shared the architect's knowledge with me. The resonance between us isn't just compatibility. It's recognition. Nyxeria's eyes widened. What do you mean? My accidental summoning wasn't an accident at all. My research, my theories. I was rediscovering principles the architects built into reality itself. Principles that are part of my very being. He met her gaze steadily. I'm one of them, aren't I? A reincarnated architect, born human but carrying their knowledge in my soul. That's the real reason you chose me. I suspected, she admitted, but I wasn't certain until I saw how naturally you took to their technology. How did you? The same way I know there's more to you than a simple succubus, he said softly. Your flames, your understanding of their systems, you're carrying architect energy too. We're both their descendants, positioned across realms, drawn together for this moment. The chamber shuddered violently. The London breach was reaching critical mass. The reset, Nyxeria said urgently. If we're both carrying architect essence, the power surge would be enough to not just reset the barriers, but strengthen them, Thomas finished. Make them impenetrable to the Void Hunters forever. He stepped closer to her. But you're right about the price. The energy release would consume us completely. No reincarnation, no afterlife, just oblivion. Their eyes met in perfect understanding. Around them, reality itself was beginning to unravel. Together, Nyxeria asked, extending her hand, flames dancing between her fingers. Thomas took it without hesitation, feeling their energies begin to resonate at a fundamental level. Together. As their powers merged and the reset sequence began, neither of them expected what happened next, a reaction that would change not just their worlds, but the very nature of reality itself. Nyxeria's eyes widened. What do you mean? My accidental summoning wasn't an accident at all. My research, my theories. I was rediscovering principles the architects built into reality itself, principles that are part of my very being. He met her gaze steadily. I'm one of them, aren't I? A reincarnated architect, born human but carrying their knowledge in my soul. That's the real reason you chose me. I suspected, she admitted, but I wasn't certain until I saw how naturally you took to their technology. How did you? The same way I know there's more to you than a simple succubus, he said softly. Your flames, your understanding of their systems, you're carrying architect energy too. We're both their descendants, positioned across realms, drawn together for this moment. The chamber shuddered violently. The London breach was reaching critical mass. The reset, Nyxeria said urgently. If we're both carrying architect essence, the power surge would be enough to not just reset the barriers, but strengthen them, Thomas finished. Make them impenetrable to the Void Hunters forever. He stepped closer to her. But you're right about the price. The energy release would consume us completely. No reincarnation, no afterlife. Just oblivion. Their eyes met in perfect understanding. Around them, reality itself was beginning to unravel. Together, Nyxeria asked, extending her hand, flames dancing between her fingers. Thomas took it without hesitation, feeling their energies begin to resonate at a fundamental level. Together. As their powers merged and the reset sequence began, neither of them expected what happened next, a reaction that would change not just their worlds, but the very nature of reality itself. The moment their hands touched, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The ancient chamber filled with light that was somehow both blinding and absolute darkness, as the combined essence of human and demon, both carrying the legacy of the architects, began to merge. But something was different. Instead of destroying them, the energies swirled and danced, creating patterns that even Thomas's enhanced understanding couldn't fully comprehend. The crystal machinery around them sang in harmonies that hadn't been heard since the dawn of creation. This isn't destruction, Nyxeria gasped, her flames interweaving with streams of quantum energy flowing from Thomas. It's transformation. The architect knowledge within them both suddenly unlocked fully, revealing the truth that had been hidden in plain sight. The failsafe wasn't meant to be a sacrifice. It was meant to be a rebirth. They knew, Thomas realized, as their consciousness began to merge. The architects knew that eventually their separate creations, humans and demons, would need to evolve together. The Void Hunters aren't the enemy. They're the catalyst. Through their joining minds, they saw the grand design. The architects hadn't just created the barriers between realms. They had created a system that would eventually guide their descendants to transcend those very barriers. The Void Hunters were part of that design, pushing the realms toward inevitable reunion. The chamber's crystals pulsed in sync with their heartbeats as their transformation accelerated. Thomas and Nyxeria's forms began to blur, not disappearing but evolving into something entirely new. Their merged consciousness expanded to encompass multiple dimensions simultaneously. Through the holographic displays, they watched as the London Breach and all the others began to change. Instead of tearing reality apart, the rifts were becoming bridges. The Void Hunters, sensing the change, shifted from destroyers to facilitators, their true purpose finally revealed. "We're not here to stop them," Nyxeria's voice echoed through their shared consciousness. "We're here to guide the transformation, to show both realms how to evolve together." Thomas's thoughts intertwined with hers, not through destruction, but through unity. Their physical forms completed their metamorphosis, becoming beings of pure energy and infinite possibility. They were neither human nor demon now, but living bridges between all realms, the first of a new kind of architect, born from the willing union of opposites. Through their new awareness, they'd reached out to both worlds simultaneously. In the demon realm, the traitors who had aided the Void Hunters saw the truth and understood their unwitting role in a grand design. In the human world, the dimensional disruptions became visible to all, but inspired wonder rather than fear. The ancient chamber, its purpose finally fulfilled, began to transform as well, becoming a nexus point for the new reality they were helping to birth. The barriers between realms didn't vanish. They evolved, becoming permeable membranes that allowed controlled interaction while maintaining cosmic balance. "We were never meant to sacrifice ourselves," Thomas/Nyxeria understood with their unified mind. "We were meant to become the guardians of this transition." Their consciousness touched the Void Hunters, and for the first time, they communicated directly. The entities weren't destroyers but midwives, preparing reality for this very moment of transformation. Their seemingly destructive actions had been necessary pressure to drive evolution. As the changes rippled through all dimensions, Thomas and Nyxeria maintained their merged form, but also their individual awareness. Two perspectives united in perfect balance. They were the template for what both their species could become, proof that opposition could transform into harmony. The crisis had passed, but their work was just beginning. As the first of the new architects, they would guide both realms through the changes to come. Their love for each other and for the infinite possibilities they now embodied would light the way for others to follow. In the end, it hadn't been about stopping an invasion or saving the world. It had been about transcending the very concepts of separation and opposition. They had moved beyond desire to discover something far more powerful, the ability to transform reality itself through the willing union of apparent opposites. And as both realms began to understand the magnitude of what had occurred, Thomas and Nyxeria embraced their new existence as living proof that the greatest power in any universe isn't destruction or preservation, but transformation born of trust, understanding, and love. The story that had begun with a seemingly accidental summoning had become something far greater, a testament to the power of moving beyond old limitations and finding, in the heart of apparent chaos, the seeds of a new and better reality.